Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. And as you can see from the appropriate attire, we're talking about Beethoven's Ninth because, as I have said many times, one cannot discuss this epic, iconic masterpiece of this monument to Western civilization without being appropriately dressed. And so here we are. However, because I can't wear my usual t-shirt with my ClassicsToday.com logo, I just wanted to show you that I have my ClassicsToday.com tie clip. There it is. Isn't that exciting? So I'm going to put this on, and then we will be ready. Stick it there. I don't know if you can read it, but that's okay. We are now ready to talk about Beethoven's Ninth. And the one we're going to talk about is this new release that I was so looking forward to. Really, really looking forward to. It's with Manfred Honeck and the Pittsburgh Symphony. Well, I was looking forward to it. In the event, it turned out to be something of a mixed bag, shall we say. A really mixed bag. The bottom line is this. Maestro Honeck has started to drink his own Kool-Aid. That is not a good thing. He is really gotten to the point, as we heard, sadly, in his Tchaikovsky Fourth Symphony, which was full of mannerisms and poking and prodding at the music, he has gotten to the point where he does things in order to be different or in order to make a point. And that point, as often as not, seems not to be Beethoven's. And I can prove it. How can I prove it? Well, listen. In the booklet, the very, very nice booklet, Maestro Honeck writes a very, very, very extensive note trying to justify everything that he does and pointing out all of the marvelous things that he has figured out and basically telling us how incredibly brilliant and smart he is to do all those things. And all I can say is he needs to keep quiet. The music has to speak for itself. I enjoyed some of these earlier notes. You know, they used to be kind of shorter and interesting when he was doing things like, the suite from Dvorak's Rusalka, for example. But they have metastasized. They have metastasized into a narcissistic hog wallow of self-regarding points about just how ingenious he is. And quite frankly, it's kind of like those phony Benjamin Zander talks, remember, where you would do like Mahler 6, and then that would be an hour and a half, and then you get 3 hours of discussion about the hour and a half. I mean, it's not quite that bad yet, but it's getting there. He's starting to believe his own PR. And that's always a bad thing, because the fact of the matter is the musical performance has to speak for itself. We should know what he's going to do because he does it, not because he says, hey, look at this part. Oh, isn't this great? And I'll give you a really, really cogent example of it. In the finale, the march with the tenor, Frau wie seine Sonnen fliegen something, you're marching like a hero to victory, right? He takes that at a ridiculous lickety-split tempo. It's, da-da, 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 ba-dum, psh, da-dum, psh, ba-dum, psh, ba-dum, psh, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. It's ridiculous. However, he tells us, well, this is the tempo of a French revolutionary march, and Beethoven was a revolutionary, and therefore, if he takes it at that tempo, it sounds somehow more revolutionary than if he doesn't take it at that tempo. Now, there are obvious logical problems with this contention. Number one, we have no idea at what tempo the French Revolution went. Number two, one man's revolution is another man's rushing off to the bathroom before he has an accident, at least in this case, which is what it sounds like. Number three, the point is not to sound like the French Revolution. The point is to sound like the march in Beethoven's Ninth. It has to make sense within the context of everything else that's going on. And so after that lickety-split march, the fugue goes off at 1 billion miles an hour, really faster than the orchestra can play it or articulate it cleanly. And in my opinion, the entire passage sounds ridiculous. And why? All because he was trying to make a point about sounding revolutionary or something like that. No, no, Maestro Honeck. You've got it wrong. And you know, and everyone who's seen me or read my stuff knows, I think Honeck is brilliant. I think his conducting has been brilliant. I look forward to every single recording that he's done. He has made magnificent recordings of Beethoven's Third, Fifth, and Seventh. In fact, I thought the Eroica was the greatest recording of the Eroica since Zell. He has the capacity to do unbelievably amazing things. But I think, frankly, when it came to Beethoven's Ninth, he decided he, A, had to be different, and B, those differences had to be somehow important. And the result is a performance that has all kinds of strange emphases that the music doesn't need, that he can't leave it alone. He can't. He becomes a control freak. He has to control everything. This is not such a big deal in the first two movements. Now, the opening movement is very, very exciting. It starts at a quick pace. I think that those two big opening crescendos leading to the unison theme could have had a little bit more time between them to let the orchestra really build up to its full climax before the unison comes crashing in. But basically, very good performance. There are moments where you begin to hear him monkeying with it. For example, when the music is going dum bum ba dum bum bum ba dum, right? And he's got to make little diminuendos and little accent things and stuff where it sounds very, very unnatural. And the result is that you sort of sit up and say to yourself, why is he doing that? Why is that an important moment? Is that something we have to notice independently of everything else that's going on around it? Often the answer is no, but it doesn't get bad. The scherzo is fantastic, absolutely fantastic, even the very quick tempo for the trio. And, it's very funny how in this fabulous booklet with the notes, Honeck is the first person to adduce justification for what he does by citing Beethoven's metronome marks, which nobody really should be paying attention to other than for proportional sort of calculations. But when he doesn't do what Beethoven says in the metronome marks or the score, then he says, well, of course, we don't need to always be strict in paying attention to the metronome marks. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either you do it or you don't do it, Maestro Honeck. The real disaster here is the adagio. It's shorter than the scherzo. It seems like he's taken a pill from the period instrument people. He says, allegedly, adagio was much quicker in the classical period than it is now. To that, there are several answers. Number one of the things that Beethoven did was set up the Romantic period. He may or may not have done something that was typical of the classical period. He was Beethoven, for God's sake. 9 times out of 10, he did something that was not typical for the classical period because he was a genius. And geniuses sometimes follow the rules and sometimes they don't. That's number one. Number two, any adagio that is shorter than the scherzo is wrong. Period. It's just too fast. It's fast. It's breathless. It's absolutely breathless. When he gets to those fanfares, bum, 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 he's just racing along. And a great moment in the symphony really goes for nothing. Absolutely nothing. I just find it to be such a concatenation of foggy thinking. And what made Honeck's Beethoven performances so far so great was the clarity of the musical thought that he projected. But here we are in the muck. We are in a bog. He has gotten his mental state and processes crossed and confused and tangled. So by the time we get to the finale, well, as you know, the cellos and basses are marked like a recitative, but in tempo. Well, if you're going to follow what Beethoven says, do it in tempo. Does Honeck do it in tempo? No, not at all. He makes a meal out of every single note in the cellos and basses. These are the most affected recitatives. And you don't have to do something with every bloody note in order to make it sound like it's speech. It doesn't make it sound like speech. It doesn't even sound like rhetorical speech. It just sounds mannered. And that is the hallmark of the entire performance of this movement. Because when the chorus finally comes in, the soloists, who are, by the way, decent but basically overparted, The reason it's overparted is because the soloists are trying to sing melodic lines that have words in them, and Honeck is poking and prodding and bashing at the accompaniments and basically making them sound small and ineffective, because the orchestra and the accompaniment are getting more attention for themselves than the words that the soloists are singing. The choir, which is the Mendelssohn Choir, I believe, here of Pittsburgh, yes, something like that. Yeah, the Mendelssohn Choir sings magnificently. I mean, they punch out every single syllable. Every word is clear. It's miraculous. It's wonderful. But it's clear to what purpose. What does it mean, what they say? You get to some moments where, I mean, und der Cherub steht vor God, those poor cherubs. It's like someone's holding a gun to their head, saying, listen, you goddamn cherub, you're going to be standing before God or I'm going to blow your brains out. I mean, that's what it sounds like. It's violent. It's not exalted. It's just yelling. It's vulgar is what it is. It's vulgar. And then on the other side of the Way Too Fast march, we get to the moment I most dread in this finale, which is the recitative. Seid umschlungen Millionen. You know, how the Millionens are getting umschlungen and embraced. And again, every single word. The exaggerated dynamics, the stretching and pulling and pushing, the tempo. It's unbearable. You think you're never, ever going to get through it. It really is. And there is so much importance, so much weight and significance behind every syllable that those syllables never come together to form meaningful words. The general sense is lost in a morass of senseless detail. That's really what happens here. And it is such an annoyance. And I'm so bitterly disappointed because Honeck really is a great conductor. And he has the Pittsburgh Symphony playing magnificently. And the sound is fantastic. But this is just a Beethoven's ninth that doesn't know whether it's coming or going. It's just has magnificent moments and then weird stuff happens. And I think someday, I hope someday, because a conductor of Honeck's ability is going to be with us, I think, for a very long time, he will come to revisit this work again. And I hope that when he does, he will have an opportunity to just sit back, rethink it, and ask himself, what is the music telling me? What do I have to do to create a certain naturalness of phrasing and an inevitability, fluidity of motion? You can have all the things that he does. You can have elasticity of tempo. You can have particularly punchy accents. You can make your rhetorical points without having every single one of them draw attention to itself and say, oh, look how important I am. This is Beethoven's ninth. In fact, what he needs to do is take the tie off. You know? Yes, this is one of the greatest monuments in the history of Western civilization, but you can't conduct it like a monument. No one wants to hear a monument. We want to hear Beethoven's ninth. We want to hear what the music expresses. We want to hear turmoil and joy and sadness and tranquility and cosmic serenity and ecstatic celebration and all of those things. And none of those qualities are going to come through if you are too busy pointing up this note or that phrase or this inner voice. It's just a bit, I think, of an ill-thought and unformed interpretation. There is greatness in here, but unfortunately and sadly for everyone concerned, it does not come through on this recording. Too bad, guys. Better luck next time. And keep on listening, friends. Take care.